Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jacob White, and in this presentation, I chose the year 1919 as my year to review art. Now, as a preface to the presentation, the year 1919 was a super controversial year, and most of the art I will be displaying will be from magazines and newspapers such as The New Yorker, The New York Times, and the St. Louis Globe Memorial. Some of the art that is in here is not outright propaganda, but it definitely doubles as it. Because this year contains so many events of surprisingly large magnitude, I will only be covering what I consider to be the largest three events. These are, in order, the passing of the 18th Amendment, which is the Prohibition, the race riots of the 1919s, and the passing of the 19th Amendment, women's right to vote. Now, first we have the Prohibition. On January 16th, the 18th Amendment was passed. According to ConstituteProject.org, the first section, and the most important section, states that after 1 year from the ratification of this article, the manufacture, sale, and transportation of intoxicating liquors within, and the importation thereof into, or the exportation thereof from the United States and all territories subject to the jurisdiction thereof for beverage purposes is hereby prohibited. This basically sums down to you can't make, drink, or sell alcohol for consumption. This had a huge impact on the country, and it sparked the creation of the speakeasy. The speakeasy was an underground bar or club that would sell alcohol and would usually have entertainment. This brings us to the painting on the right of the next slide. This is of the old Absinthe House. This was a bar in New Orleans that was turned into a speakeasy, and it was also run by the Casboni family, which dealt in a lot of shady business with alcohol after it had been outlawed. Up here, this shows us a glimpse into what a speakeasy would have had. So it has their entertainers, their dancers, and their musicians. And over here is another newspaper article illustration that shows us how women viewed the prohibition and why they wanted to outlaw alcohol. Next, on a less positive note, we have the race riots. These riots began in May and continued through 26 cities of America from the summer to the fall. The first one started because a white boy decided it was a good idea to throw rocks at a group of teenage black children floating down the river on a raft. This quickly escalated into full-on riots that claimed thousands of lives. Here we have a newspaper clipping from from St. Louis that illustrates the events that had happened. Here we see the depiction of another race riot from Chicago. This piece shows us a view of what it would have been like to live in a big city during a riot and the horrors that we would have seen. It really was a scary time. Next, on a more positive note, we will end on women's right to vote. Yay! The passing of the 19th Amendment. On June 4th, the 19th Amendment was passed and gave the right to women to vote. These art pieces show us the minds of the women and the men of the time who were trying to get the 19th Amendment passed. Even though these pieces do count as propaganda, they still are art pieces. And it's really cool to think about a time where a bill or a law was still being passed in the Constitution. Because at least in my lifetime, I'm 20 years old, I haven't been part of anything like that. And it's really interesting to think about what it would have been like. And this kind of shows us what it would have been like. These are the views that the people had of the time, and it stands as like a contextual illustration of the time period. That brings us to the end of this presentation. My name is Jacob White. I covered the year 1919, and these were the three largest events of the time period that I believed had an effect on the art. Thank you. Goodbye.